Welcome to Godot Unscripted, a podcast on the Godot ecosystem. You'll never believe who we have here today, tonight, this morning. From Brussels with love, it's the one and only Sander. An extensive history of games, love of art, and curiosity have brought him here today. He's a lead developer and a tech artist at Studio Tolima who are about to debut their new game, Koira. Sander, how the hell are you?
Thanks for the awesome intro, Daniel. I'm very good. I'm very excited to be on the podcast for sure, and I'm very excited for indeed, like you said, releasing the game that we've been cooking up for almost 3 years. Yeah.
3 years, that's crazy. I'm so excited to play it as well.
Yeah, actually, like we're now in the Steam Next Fest. I don't know when the podcast is gonna come out, but we are in Steam Next Fest, or we will have been in the Steam Next Fest, and then in a few weeks we'll release. The 1st of April will come out, and then everyone can play the whole thing.
That's so crazy. This has got to be one of the games made in Godot that's taken the longest.
You think?
I'm not sure, but probably.
It's a good question, actually. I don't know. I think there's a lot of unfinished projects. Never will see the light of day.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, maybe I'm actually not sure how long Domekeeper, the development for that was, or like other big titles.
That's true. That's a good point.
Because I think Brotato was pretty fast to develop.
Before we get into the present and future, I'd like to start with the past. And more specifically, your past. So could you tell me a little bit about how you got into games and what inspired your love for them?
Yeah, for sure. So before I could program, I was like, I think 15 or something like this. And everyone, when they get 15 and they get to high school, they get this pocket calculator where you can make graphs and stuff. And I was like, you can program on these things. And so I would just spend my whole every math class, working on games on my pocket calculator, making little things like Pokemon and some GTA kind of clones. And then I would send them over to my friends in class because it had like a link cable, like the old Game Boys, basically.
What?
And so I could give everyone my latest games. And so I actually learned to make games and to program through having these calculators, these Texas Instruments, and that's where my love for creating games started.
That's fucking crazy. So you made GTA and Pokemon on a calculator? Oh my god, do you still have those?
No, I have the calculator, but I don't have the games anymore.
But you could make the game again and spread it online.
Yes, for sure. I think my technical capabilities will be way better by now, and I could create these little games pretty quickly again. Because back then I didn't on these pocket calculators you had all the letters of the alphabet, and they could be used as variables, and so I only used these. I couldn't get the concept of arrays back then, and so I only used 26 variables in all my games.
That's crazy. That's like a challenge.
Yeah. Because these variables were shared between all your programs, so you could you could not use fresh 26 variables for one program and then 26 other ones. It was the same 26. So yeah, there were a lot of technical limitations, but it was a lot of fun. And my math teacher was always like, "Sander, you're calculating so much. You seem to be calculating non-stop during my classes." And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's math class. After my high school, I went to university doing boring programming. And so I got the master's in recommender systems, which basically means whenever you go to Netflix and Netflix recommends you something, that's where I did my master's thesis on and my specialty. And after that, I worked for about 2 years as a data scientist in an automated IoT company, which means Internet of Things. So things like your smart fridge, your I don't know, your curtains or whatever can be.
My curtain? No.
You can have smart curtains, yeah, for sure. So all these smart devices send data, and we had a platform that could process this data, and then you could make little rules with drag and drop functionality, things like this. And after this, I had a long think, and I was like, is this what I want to do in life? Do I want to make rich companies richer? Because that's what you do when you do IoT. And then the idea was, no, I want to convey emotions to people. And one of the things I knew the best how to do that was through games. So then I started to do more and more games, like one game a month. Like this, I have now a big portfolio of games on my itch account.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. So what, around what time period was this?
This was around COVID. But it was before, like it was in late 2018, 2019, and then COVID hit. And then, of course, I had so much more time to spend on creating games. So I did actually spend a lot of time creating games.
I want to say this is fairly recent, but that's fucking 7 years ago. I feel old.
Yes.
So one of the first ones you did was Disco Death Race, or was that the first one from these Game Jam games?
Disco Death Race was indeed like the first. Disco Death Race was the first jam I ever did, like ever first game jam. I did it with a friend in a weekend. Like we rented out like a little location, like a little house, so we could just spend the whole weekend playing Trackmania and making game jam.
That sounds so awesome, like a LAN party, but for programming.
Yeah, exactly. And was also the first time I used Godot.
Oh, that's made with Godot as well?
Yeah.
No way. So you've been a Godot purist the whole time?
No. I'm not I've not been a Godot purist all my career. Like I've made games in Unity. I've made games in Unreal. I've made games in Phaser, which is a JavaScript game engine. But for me, after Disco Death Race, it just stuck to me the most. Like I know I'm sorry, you're probably gonna ask this question later about why Godot. But for me, Godot just stuck the most. Like it's so intuitive. You can, like, for me and my thinking process, it works the best because if I think of I want to do X, Y, Z, I know what kind of middle steps I need to take, and taking these middle steps in Godot is just super easy and convenient. Like I need to assemble nodes, I need to give certain nodes scripts, things like this, and just the way how this is structured for me makes the most sense in my head. While in other game engines, it does not.
Right. That makes sense, right? That's also why I love Godot. It really has this component first approach, and it really helps you think of things in a simpler light.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm wondering, because I was also looking at your website and you had a couple of mobile games. Were those also done in Godot?
Yes. I think the only games that are not made in Godot on my website are... Yeah, there's only one, and it's called Dream Job. And that's a game that we did for a game jam, and we didn't finish it because the team was very optimistic.
But all these games, and even the ones you don't have here, like the ones from Unity and Unreal, must mean you've learned so many lessons throughout the years.
Yes, I would say if you ever want to get into game development, like for all the beginners out there, like just do game jams, like do one weekend projects, and you'll learn so much just by doing these things.
Nothing to add. That's absolutely true. Before we move on to the Studio Tolima, I want to ask, which of these past games are you fond of the most?
Oh, I think I really like taart, which in Dutch, so taart is a Dutch word, it means cake. And it was a game jam. It was a game we made for the Global Game Jam. So it was the first real life game jam I went to. I got partnered up with a girl who never made a game ever, and she also doesn't know how to code. She was just an artist, and she only worked in physical media. So she did all the art in watercolor, like she painted it watercolor, and then we had to scan it in with a scanner in the building, and we had to import it, like cut it out perfectly, import it. And it just turned out so great as a game that's like less than a minute long. It's one of my favorites.
It's so silly. I love it. I was just playing it, especially the sounds. I guess that was her.
Yeah, it's us both. Like we both did the sounds. We had to, like, I brought a microphone and we had to go in like a separate room and make these weird sounds together, which was also one of the fun things to do, of course, for games.
Absolutely. So throughout this period, you were making these games. were you working somewhere else or still at the same company?
So yeah, that was when I was doing the data scientist job.
Okay, and then at that point, with the last Game Jam game, you said, right, that's it. Time to make my own studio, or time to join our own studio. Or how did it go?
Yeah, so it was like the planets aligned, basically. Like I was not really looking for a job, but I was starting to get to know people in the games industry because I was posting all of these little games, and I was posting a lot on Twitter and on Instagram, and going to different events in Belgium around games. And at some point, I joined the Slack channel for Belgian games, and there was a job offer for a Godot game developer.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, that's interesting. I'm not really looking for a job, but I'll check it out. And so I asked this guy, like, what kind of game are you making? And so he sent me it was Ben Lega, who's the founder of the studio and the creative director. And so he sent me a key for the demo, and I played it, and it's like, this is exactly the kind of game I want to make. It was emotionally charged. There's no violence. It was very animation and music heavy. Like a lot of the emotions came through the story itself. And so I was like, this is exactly what I wanted, what I would have started making if I would have started my own gaming company. And so then I applied. I talked to Ben. I got the job, and then I moved city. So I really had to move to Brussels, the capital of Belgium, to be close there, because the game dev community in Brussels is also very, very tight and very awesome. So everything just aligned, and I went 100% for it, and now I live in Brussels.
How's that change been for you?
Good, actually. Like game development is really a lot of fun. It can be a little stressful, especially because now I am the lead developer. So every time there is something going wrong in the game, it's me who has to solve it, of course. While before it was more like one of the programmers. So it can be stressful from time to time, but then again, like making games is just so much fun. And the problems you have to solve is, instead of software where it's like corporate software, you have to think about like, how do we make sure that the mushrooms in the level move nicely along with the player? It's like such a different kind of problem to have.
So much better than increasing CPI by 3%, right?
Exactly, yes.
Now, before we keep on talking about this, could you give me a small, and everyone else, a small introduction to what Koira actually is? Sell it to us.
So Koira is a poetic, narrative-driven adventure game where you find a little puppy in the forest and you have to save him. And after saving the little puppy, you have to learn to work together and get to a house that you see in the distance. And all of the art is beautifully hand-painted. The focus is mostly the story and the music and the animation, so that you're 100% in the game world, because there is no text, there's no speaking, no reading. It's just everything is conveyed through the change of emotion, and it can be through music, through animation, through different game mechanics that evolve. But of course, there are, like, you have this little puppy that you can pet and you can play with him, and you're going towards this goal in the distance, which is the house. But there are also evils lurking in the nice, beautiful, snowy forest in the form of hunters who try to kidnap your dog or get your dog, and you have to defend your friendship.
That's interesting, because you mentioned there was no violence or a low amount. So how is this handled?
So it's all about story, basically. So there is you as the player cannot cause violence, but the hunters, they do use violence. And it's a little bit of a give and take between the two. But to really appreciate it, it's important to play the game as well.
Gotcha. So we'll keep it there for now. And I'm wondering, what games inspired Koira?
So the big inspirations for Koira were games like Florence, Journey, and especially because these games, they don't have text either. So you have to explore the mechanics yourself, and the mechanics, they evolve over time during play to tell a story. And one of the big examples of this in Florence is you have this mini game where you have to talk to somebody, and you have to puzzle like A text balloon.
Oh.
Yeah. So and the progression is that in the beginning it's a little hard to talk to them. So you have to really puzzle the text balloon together. In the middle, you get to know them, and it's like your relationship is building. So it's very easy to build a text balloon. And at the end, you have a fight. And so the text balloon is very easy to make because in a fight you can shout words and without thinking about them, but they can hurt or they have a big impact nonetheless. So actually, this mechanic over the duration of the game gets easier to do. Like the game gets easier, but the impact that this mechanic has on the emotion is very different, and that's actually what we wanted to achieve. Like, how can we make a game that not necessarily gets harder as you go on, but where the mechanic changes in such a way that you have a story through the mechanic itself.
That sounds so fucking unique and fun, and yeah, great storytelling. Reminds me a little bit of a Tale of Two Brothers. They do also a little bit of that mechanical storytelling when you lose part of the controller, right? When something happens, but I won't say what.
Yes.
Anyways, when you joined the studio, how many were you, and how has that creative process worked within the studio?
Yeah, so when I joined the studio, we were 3 people. I think 2 interns at the time. So that's almost 3 years ago. Then at some point, at the maximum point, we were 9 people. Towards the end of production, we went back to a stable amount of 6 people, and then now we are 2. So a whole curve of different employee rates, and that's mostly for different reasons, both budgets and project management wise, project need wise as well.
I can understand that. It's always complicated, especially for smaller companies, because the overhead just from management, the legal, it's a lot of stuff to keep track of, and it really does drain your time and resources. And if you don't plan ahead quite well, nobody can plan accurately, perfectly, right?
No, yeah.
You can't say this is happening in 3 years exactly. Shit always happens. You never know.
Yeah, for sure, and especially if it's your first game, like you think you know how it's gonna go, and then you put everything in practice, and it just messes up. Like one of the things we iterated a lot on is just how we structure our week and how we structure our communication between everyone. Like I think in the start we did almost 3 or 4 months with every week a different structure of how we just structure the week.
You mean rituals, stand-ups, all hands, for example, types of meetings.
Exactly, types of meetings.
When releases happen, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you go a little bit more in depth in that? Because it sounds quite interesting. The building of the team processes and pipelines.
Yes, for sure. I think Ben would explain this way better than me. We just, in the beginning we had a lot of looking on how to, for example, go from an idea of a thing to the actual thing in the game. Like, for example, if you want to make an agent, which could be one of the hunters, for example, like when do you start with making the art? When do you start with programming the logic? A naive way would be everyone starts at the same time. So you make the art at the same time you make the logic, at the same time you make the animations or the sounds or whatever. So we tried that for a lot of things as well, but then you hit a lot of roadblocks where the programming says like, oh, but now it has to work like this, so we might have to change all the assets, and then you change all the assets. But the same thing could happen from the art, where the art says like, oh, but these things have to be split because it has to bend in the middle or whatever, and then the programmer all of a sudden has to change these kinds of structures. Like it's at the start you think like, oh, it doesn't matter that much, you just adapt the whole way through, but it's not true. It's pretty hard to actually plan a nice workflow where everyone's work is not being redone too many times.
Absolutely. That's always one of the hardest parts when forming a team and forming pipelines, right?
Yes.
You want everyone to be working on something meaningful all the time. But the risk always is of working on something that will be non-meaningful or wasted away. Keeping people occupied on something meaningful is sometimes a full-time job, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the mythical man month, right?
Recommend that to everyone listening. One of the greats. And then I want to ask, like, once you joined, did you also take part in the game design? How often were your ideas or ideas of other team members incorporated?
Especially in the beginning, there was a lot of general brainstorming with the whole team because a lot of things had to still be decided. So it was a lot of brainstorms, a lot of sitting together, thinking about what's the story, how do we design every little aspect of the game. And as time went by, you start to realize what the game actually is about. You start to realize what the scope will be. You start to realize what the emotions are that you are conveying, and so you can lean more into those. And then you need somebody to overlook the whole design and to like cut knots and say, okay, we're doing this and not this, and we're doing this and not this. So in the start, I would say it was more everyone helps out, and a little bit more towards the end, it was especially Ben who would take the ropes in hand to keep all of the design together.
Right. It sounds quite important, but also sounds nice that the team had the ability to pitch in at the beginning of the development.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm wondering, I wanted to ask, we talked earlier about Godot in an individual smaller capacity, but with a team of up to 9 people at one point, what were some of the benefits and some of the pain points you had?
The biggest benefit of Godot for a bigger team like ours is that it's very easy to learn because we have a lot of artists working on the game. We had 2 animators, we had a composer, and we had a visual artist who did more static assets. And they all worked directly into Godot by decorating levels, by triggering sounds here and there, by making animations, by writing little snippets of code. And it was very easy to get them on board, to teach them Godot, to show them how to write actual code, because GDScript is amazingly simple to write and easy to grasp because it's like Python. So that means that you can almost read it like as if it is human instructions. So that was a very big upside.
Nice. And what about the other side of the coin?
The downside for us, one of the harder things to work with, because we work in Godot 3 for now. Like this project is made in Godot 3.
Right.
It was still not ideal on merging scene files in GitHub. So we use GitHub as version control, which I recommend for everyone. Like any project you ever make, first make a GitHub repository and then start making the thing. But the problem is that in Godot 3, merging files was not great. It was very easy to break a scene file, and then we would just be screwed. We had to revert, or we have to throw away somebody's work, which is not great. So, and how we solved that was basically by having a dedicated Discord channel where we would say in which scene we are working, so nobody else starts working in the same scene. And that actually worked very well for us.
Yeah. Just to let you know, I work at a medium-sized company, 300 people. And so I'm in a team mostly comprised of backend engineers. We still do that sometimes. Not with repos, but with more complicated stuff. But at the end of the day, it's the same. You have a channel. I'm working on this. Please, nobody touch it.
Yeah. It works pretty. It works pretty all right.
Right? If it works, it works.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the important thing.
And then everyone says like, why don't you use Plastic or another version in controlling system so that it automatically locks files for you and you don't have to put it in a Discord. And the reason is just that I like Git more.
I love that. That's me. I love the logo. You mentioned a little bit of the struggles with Godot 3, but overall, as a studio, what were some of the lessons you learned since you joined?
One of the biggest lessons I learned is make in-house tooling. Like if you make a big game, then you're probably gonna have things that you can automate during development, and these automated things are gonna save you a lot of time. Like one of the tools I made for our game literally saved us months of development. And I spent like less than a week developing the thing. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest lesson I took away from the technical part. It's like make in-house. If you make a big project, make in-house tooling to make your life easier. Else you're just stuck in doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah. I just want to ask out of curiosity, could you mention what the tool is and what it did?
Yeah, for sure. So in Godot 3, you could have nav meshes, but you could not bake them. You could not like cut them nicely around static objects or static bodies. So you had to do that all manually. And so I made a plugin for Godot 3 that made a nav mesh automatically from whatever is in the level. I think now in Godot 4 it exists. Or it does exist. I've already used it. I'm not sure in what capacity it does. It's the same thing as what I made. But yeah, so this thing saved us so much time, because else we would have had to change the nav mesh every moment you move over a tree or a rock. You have to like redo the whole thing.
It sounds crazy. It sounds like a good use of your time. How do you decide if it's worth making tooling for it, and where do you draw the line?
There is indeed a line that you have to draw, because you cannot just make tools because programmers love making tools and and project managers don't like that programmers like making tools. Project managers want their projects to go on.
It's true.
Right. So you do need to indeed draw a line. And for me, that line was mostly, there's different criteria. There is the criteria of when something is just mind-numbing and time-consuming, which was very much the case with the nav meshes. Like, we could do it all manually, and it actually would have been more precise, because with an automated tool, you always have the risk of something goes wrong, but you don't know where, or you don't see it because you just press the button and magic happens, right? Then another criteria could be something that's prone to error. And one of these things is, for example, doing the export and upload to Steam, the Steam backend. Like, you always had to make sure that you uploaded to the right repository, that you did the export for the right platforms, that each platform had to be treated a little bit differently. And then once it's on Steam, you have to put it on the right branch, yada, yada, yada. So there it's, a human could do it pretty well, but it's just so crucial that everything has to happen correctly. That I created a tool for it. So like the export and the upload to Steam automatically, like, were done automatically. And in the end, it did save us also a lot of time. But like, just making sure that every time you run this thing, it does exactly the same thing is very crucial. So those are the two things I would say, like things that are really time consuming, or things that are very critical and that are always have to be executed in exactly the same way.
No room for human error.
Yeah.
Makes absolute sense. Nice. Before we talk about the upcoming release of Koira, I would like to ask you about the development time in total and the planning around that. Was it always expected that development would last 3 years?
No, we did have a lot of extra time added to the project. That was mostly because at the beginning we were a little bit naive in how to scope the project, like everyone ever with their game. And in the end, we still didn't have time enough to put everything in that we really wanted to be in there. So we did have quite some extensions, but the good thing is that we never communicated this to the public. So we never had the problem of like saying, hey, this thing is going to come out next month, and then having to postpone it.
Oh, no,
so we never communicated this. We always postpone it secretly. And then at the end, now our release date was so well planned that we had time enough to even take holidays, because we postponed the recording of the podcast, especially because I was on holidays for a month. And that's I think I've heard from a lot of other game developers that this is the way to go. Like, try to, instead of doing your holidays after release, try to do them right before release, so you're super fresh. Then you release, and then release is always going to be like a big Armageddon of marketing, of patching, of communications, all these kind of things culminating to this one point. So it's better to start that moment fresh instead of the opposite way, where you're stressed by releasing, and then after release, it's the extra stress of maintaining your hype and your patches going.
Exactly. So you're fresh and ready for Armageddon.
I'm very fresh, yes. I'm 2 days back from holidays. I'm super ready to start doing marketing and doing the last patches, yeah.
Nice. I can't wait to see it. Are you working with a publisher?
Yes. So our publisher is Don't Not. They just released Lost Records Bloom and Rage. They're also known for Jusant or Jusant, Game of the Year last year.
Ooh, yeah.
And their first success was Life is Strange many years ago.
And did you find them or did they find you?
They found us in a way. The cool thing here in Brussels is like I said earlier, we have a very tight community. And one of the events that they do here is called the Big Brotaru, which is an event where you can show your games on the big screen in a cinema. And so you can play your games for 5 minutes and explain how it works. And Don't Not was in the room. And afterwards, so they reached out to us, and yeah, the ball got rolling. We had like negotiations, things like this. And so after this event, the whole team got hired together. So that was, after that point, was actually the point I came into the project.
Oh, nice. Sounds fantastic. And how have they been as a publisher?
Very good, actually. They never tell you what to do, or they never demand you to do something in the design of the game. They always just give feedback, and this feedback can be like 80 pages of feedback on like a build that we sent, and they just send like feedback for everything, which is great because you don't use everything, you just go through it, and the points where you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, we'll change this. You do those, and then the points that were extra, they're extra, right?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say if you can get published by Don't Not, you're in for a treat for sure.
Got it. So travel to Belgium, go to the event, and show my game on the big screen.
Yes. Well, they are a publisher from Paris, so you can also just go to Paris to their offices.
Oh, that makes more sense. Travel to Paris, go to their offices. They ask me how I broke in. I show them the game.
And afterwards, you eat baguettes and drink coffee or something. I don't know.
Delicious. Sounds like a dream. Now, with the release of the game approaching, I want to ask you how you feel, how the team feels, and what are you looking forward to?
I feel excited, actually. Like the game has been done for over a month now. Because, yeah, a month ago we stopped working on the project. We went on holidays. I'm just back from the holidays. And so the game is done. Only thing we have to do is marketing. And I'm super excited to have people play the whole thing, because we have so many cool surprises in store that will happen in the game, and that we're also not gonna put in marketing. So people will not see them in the marketing itself, but you have to play the game and go through the story. And I think that's the general sentiment with the whole studio. Like, everyone put so much love into creating this game, into creating this little puppy dog that you can play with, and all the other world environment interactions and little hidden things. That it's gonna be so awesome to see people actually play with it and have fun.
Yeah, that's beautiful to hear. I'm also looking forward to it. I love those types of games. Hope there's a lot of Easter eggs. I want to 100% it.
It's not gonna be hard to 100% it, I think. We do have Steam achievements.
Let's go. Hype. All right. 2 last questions. So the first one is the studio already thinking about their next game, or are you focused right now on, as you said, release, marketing, Armageddon?
We're really focusing on release, marketing, Armageddon. We did do a little game jam game a few weeks ago, because we want to research certain topics within game development to see what we feel the most enthusiastic about for our next project. We have no idea of what it could be. We're doing research in different domains into different things. And so the last game jam we did is called Pluma Familia, where we tried to make a toy that was fun to play. And so we participated in the Godot Wild Jam to get some feedback. It's not gonna be the next project, and I'm not sure any of it will be in the next project. But it was good to do the research and see how fast we could make something in like a week. But no, we don't have a planned next project. No, the things we would like to research are multitude. we still want to stay into the emotional kind of sphere of games, but the things we want to research are how can we make this replayable? How can you make something emotional replayable that's not just a game you go through from A to Z, but still keep it, like, give it this something very personal, or like personal stories happen. Like that could be with procedural generation or puzzle replayability. I don't know. We still have to do the research. Another thing we would really like to go into is multiplayer, because multiplayer brings a lot of like emergent storytelling into a game. If you play with your friends, you always fool around, and this fooling around can culminate into a story that you tell together. Those are the two big topics we want to research.
Fair enough. It makes sense to focus on it. I have one last question for you. If you could give some advice to anyone out there on game development or otherwise, what would you say?
I would say make little experiments. Like think of something that you've never seen before, and then try to make it in a small thing. So this could be, like, for example, one of the games. The games we have on my HIO is like a painting game where you paint the path the hero has to traverse. It was just like, what if you had to paint the path with paint, basically, of what your hero will traverse, and just make these little things. Make them for a weekend, for an evening. Throw them away. Don't stay too long on one project. Churn through a lot of them, and you'll get so many ideas. You get so many awesome leads and mechanics that at some point when you're ready to make a big game, you can just draw from the head of ideas that you did earlier. You'll have an amazing game and something original. Because so many people just say like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna learn game development. So I'm gonna make a puzzle platformer, and then they make one puzzle platformer for 5 years, and then at the end they never release it. It would be better to do 3 or even 4 years of every weekend or every month a little game, and then 1 year of doing a proper game to sell and to commercialize. That's gonna be way better.
Thank you for those beautiful words.
People don't need to, like, I never went to a game development school. People think they're imposters if they didn't, but I think it's actually the opposite, because where I work in a co-working, especially for game developers. So there's a lot of one-man studios, and I think there's only one person or two people who went to actual game development schools, and all the rest are architects, physicists, philosophers, like nothing in close to game development or game design, and they're still doing it. So if you want to make games, you can do it, and you have to go for it.
And I think that is a good note to end on. So thank you, Sander. Please plug your stuff. Where can we support Tolima Productions? Sorry, Studio Tolima.
Yes, we're Studio Tolima. So you can find us on almost any social media. We're on Blue Sky. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're still on Twitter even. You can find us under Studio Tolima. And there you can follow us, of course. You can wishlist our game Koira. It's on Steam. It's Koira. Koira. You can wishlist it there, or if you really listen to this episode in the way future, which is in 1 month, then it's going to be out, so you can just directly buy it and support our next projects.
Nice. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who stopped by to listen. This was Godot Unscripted. Cue free. I want to ask you one more thing, because we didn't get to talk about the book. Why did you write a book? That's so crazy.
Yeah, so I like a few years ago, I was very, very vocal on Twitter about being using Godot. And a person from Pact, which is a technical book publisher, they reached out to me asking like, do you want to do a Godot book? And at that point I was like, yes, I want to do this. This is super awesome. And now it's out, and I still get a lot of cool feedback from people saying that they really enjoy the book. So I'm very glad that it exists. But it was a lot of work, I have to admit. Like, if you ever think about writing a book while doing a game, think twice.
No.
But it is possible.
That's what I always hear, right? 20% of the work, 20% of the effort, 80% of the work. But that last 20% of the book, that's where they get you.
Yes, and then you have to churn through chapters, and then of course they give you a lot of like feedback, and you have to rewrite certain things. Yeah, then it can drag on a little bit. But I'm glad it exists. I'm glad it's out there. I think it was in the Humble Bundle, and there it sold a lot of copies as well.
Oh, really?
So it was
nice.
fun. Yeah.
Nice. Mad respect.